somebody that I have a high regard for because he deals with homeless, and he's with Family Promise, one of the homeless shelters. And we talked about the great need for housing, better than what we're doing. The Evicted, the book has come out, Evicted, bestseller. The guy researched 15% of the very poor intersect with Section 8 and subsidized housing. The vast majority of them have to deal with the marketplace that is not kind to them. In this urban planning transit environment, John, a comment.
So this is the great challenge. This is without question the greatest challenge that we face with an investment like light rail, and that is maintaining a diverse, equitable neighborhood, and that means affordable housing. So it's a tricky one. There are ways to approach it, both from the state perspective and from the municipality perspective, where policies can be put in place. So far, those things have been coming along slowly, and what we are largely seeing is market rate housing development. There are very engaged organizations like LISC Phoenix. That is
an acronym.
It is. It stands for Local Initiative Support Coalition Corporation.
Whatever.
And what they do is they focus on equitable development, and part of that, and here in Phoenix, they're focusing exclusively on the light rail. So you see a project like La Mesita in Mesa, which is a fantastic project in partnership with A New Leaf. And what that organization does is it shelters, it emergency shelters women who have been in abusive relationships with their families. Over time, it gives them financial education and resources, helps them get jobs, and then progressively moves them into housing that they pay a subsidized rent for, and then ultimately housing that they pay market rate for, all within the same complex. It's a fantastic project.
That's heartening for me to hear. It is disheartening when I was reading the New York Times, and the studies have come out about what they call the upper quintile. It's that 20%, and of America that are doing well. They're separating from the rest of us. I wonder whether I'm or you're in that 20%, but there's something going on, and that's not good for our society.
It's not, and nobody, I don't think anybody, I made this point in a previous show, and it's a little bit difficult point, but I'll try again. We talk about America being a place of equality. Equality is a very difficult thing to think about these days because there is so much stratification.
Right.
So what we really, it's not a compromise so much to say that equity is important. All right. So if I can stand taller than you, you should be able to have a footstool that makes you just as tall as me. And that footstool in this case is affordable housing. You know, allow people who have been in these neighborhoods to stay in these neighborhoods and reap the benefits of what's happened.
And not be evicted, which is so harmful on that family that has enough pressure already.
And quite frankly, it's also harmful for the people who are coming in to gentrify the place because they're not experiencing diversity. They're not experiencing anything other than themselves. And that's a much less rich life.
How tough is it to operate you work for a nonprofit organization, and you have to have a careful dance with politics, policy. You probably have other words. What's that like, John Ford? I'm curious, because I've heard you on the show several times, and I've always wanted to ask you that. We got a couple of minutes here, so how do you handle that?
You know, there's a couple of ways to handle that. I think the first one is to get your principles right. If you have well-grounded principles about what you're doing, then it makes sense to pursue those principles regardless of political affiliation. And I'll just make one example of that. That's the Affordable Care Act. We said as far back as 2002 that coverage and access to care is important. So when the Affordable Care Act came along, we didn't lobby for it. We didn't do anything and say, oh, we support this or that. But when it became a law, we jumped. And we said, look, this is an opportunity to get people access to care and coverage. It's not a political thing for us. It just happens to be something that really is important to people's health, and we're going to work with that.
And I know United Health has dropped out of Arizona. They're not as big a player as what some people think. I was reading an article, but it still is a whole for the more rural areas of Arizona.